Boker Tov, Marchim Tov to everybody. Today's daf is Daf Peites in Ksubas, Daf Peites. We'll start again from the Mishnah that we covered yesterday, just quickly, the bottom of Peiches on base. When a man gets divorced, woman gets divorced, he takes two to part, right? Takes two to get divorced. There's two things involved in terms of her collecting her ksuba. Number one, she has a get. That proves that she's divorced, so she'd be able to collect her ksuba with her get. We'll see later on what they do with the get is that they tear it up, so she shouldn't be able to collect the second time. However, she also has a ksuba. She can collect the l'chara with either document. So let's say she brings her get, and she doesn't have a ksuba. The husband might say, well, I already paid the ksuba. We tore it up. No. The ksuba you can collect even if you don't have a written ksuba. Many places they didn't write a ksuba. Or maybe they wrote it, and he claims he paid for it. But since you can collect without a ksuba, that's not a valid argument. So if she has her get, that's a proof, because everybody who gets divorced has to have a get. A ksuba you can get even if you didn't write a ksuba. Many places they didn't write a ksuba because they didn't have to hold on to the paper and all that. But there's no way you can get and she's entitled to get the 200. We'll call it the 200 for the psula, 100 for the amana. She's entitled to it even if she has a ksuba or not. But without a get, she can't collect. Because everybody has to have it. Everybody who's divorced, you can't be divorced without a get. You can be married without a ksuba because that's what we call a t'nai bezin. It's an act of the court. You have to have a ksuba. Everybody's entitled to ksuba whether it's written or not. But nobody can get divorced without a written document. There's no such thing as like the common law that the judge says you're divorced. You have to have a get. Without a get, you can't get divorced. So see, give it a ksuba. Go back ksuba so she can collect it. Ksuba, let's say the other way around. Let's say she says, okay, here's my ksuba. I want to collect. Where's the get? Obviously, we're talking about where he's still alive, right? You should also collect your ksuba if he's dead, but we'll talk about that later if he's dead. But here we're talking about where the husband and wife have both come to court. She says, here's the ksuba, I want my money. Says, where's the get? I paid you already the get and we ripped it up. Now you're collecting a second time. She says, I lost the get. I don't have it, I lost it. Not a good excuse. He says, no, I paid you already. You pulled out the get and I got a receipt. Why did I get a receipt? Because I was worried tearing up the get isn't good enough, because I was worried about this case. I was worried that maybe you're going to try to collect twice, once with the get and once with the ksuba. He said, so they wrote me a receipt, which is generally frowned upon, as we'll see. The people didn't like receipts. The rabbis didn't like receipts because you have to hold on to your receipt forever, right? Today, you have a canceled check, you have the bank statement, you have a proof of the payment. But in those days, when everything was basically cash or the equivalent of cash, so to prove you paid something, you had to have a receipt. But how long can you hold on to a receipt? The animals would eat it up, it would get deteriorated, it would get destroyed in a fire, whatever. So he says, I had a shover because I paid you based on it, but I lost it. So who's telling or Balchov, after, like we said, after Yovel, he's collecting his debt, and the guy says, wait a minute, not Yovel, I said Yovel Shemitah. After Shemitah, he's collecting his he's collecting the loan, and the guy says, Shemitah knocked off the loan. Well, I had a principal. Where is it? I lost it, right? So you don't have to be paid. You don't have to be paid. Because if you have a ksuba without a get, the guy says, well, where's your get? I paid you based on the get. I paid you already. Now you're just pulling out a ksuba to collect it a second time. Those have to be paid. When the goyim forbade Jewish activities, anything religious like having a get or a principal, then Isha Gavak below we get, she can collect without a get. Because they didn't hold on to the get. In other words, they gave a get in private in the Bezdin, and then they got rid of it because she couldn't hold on to it. So then they had to look for excuses, and they were able to collect without a get and without a principal. But the Gemara says, in the case of the first case, of get, he proves he gives a get. She has a get. She says, I want to collect my ksuba, even though there's no ksuba. Why aren't you worried that maybe she'll collect this second time? I'm going to collect once with a get and once with a ksuba. Maybe she has a get in her pocket and she doesn't want to show it now. She'll collect in one court with a get. Here's I want to get my $200. I'm divorced. I'm entitled, right? And then maybe there's another ksuba. She'll collect the second time. It must be you write a receipt. When we say over here she has a get without a ksuba, it must be that you write a receipt. Now that's always a discussion. Do you write receipts or not? Some rabbis said yes, some said no. But the Gemara always came out, we prefer not to write receipts. That's the halacha. You don't write receipts. Try to avoid receipts. In other words, if I have an IOU, let's say, you owe me money. Okay, I come with the IOU and you pay me. What do you want to do with that IOU? You want to rip it up or burn it, right? Do you say that? Or you say, no, I'll hold on to my IOU and I'll give you a receipt. Now you have to hold on to your receipt forever. It's better the finish with it, tear up the IOU, right? So the rabbis always said, avoid the receipt. But over here, you have a receipt. Otherwise, why would he pay? Why would he pay based on the get when he might say, wait a minute, I'm giving you the $200 based on the get. And then tomorrow you'll go to another court and collect with the ksuba. So he must have a receipt. Maybe she'll collect later on with the ksuba. Not only that, maybe not on the court from me, but maybe after I die, she'll collect from the Yorshim. What happened? He divorced her now, right? She has a get. She collects with the get. And if he doesn't have a receipt, maybe she has a ksuba. And she'll wait 10 years till he dies and then go to court and say, I wasn't divorced. Here, I was married to this guy. Here's our ksuba. I want to collect it from the Yorshim now. Why aren't you worried about that? It must be because there is a receipt. Rav, so two answers. Rav says, Makom Shein Kosem Ksuba. Again, we're speaking of a place they don't write ksubas. It's you said it's an act of it's an act of the court. It's an act of best. Everybody's entitled to a ksuba, whether it's written or not. Many places they didn't write a ksuba, just as though, you knew she got married when she was a psul, she gets 200. She was a ba'ula and amana, gets 100. That's it. In other words, we rely on that. So there's nothing to worry about that she's going to collect us because they didn't write ksubas. There's a place where they didn't write ksubas. They didn't write a ksuba. They relied on the fact everybody's entitled to it automatically, but you didn't have to write one. Therefore, there's no concern that she's going to collect twice because they didn't write ksubas. It was just basic good. So what did you collect with? What did you collect with? With the get? Or if he dies, proof of death, bring the death certificate. You know, they have a death certificate when somebody dies, his death certificate. So that proves that he's dead. Really what it means is Aiden, right? Ushmuelov says, no, you could, I'm actually speaking where they do write a ksuba. So if they write a ksuba, why aren't you worried that she's going to collect twice? Once now and once maybe after he dies. Shmuel Kosem Shover. Does that mean, according to Shmuel, that you do write receipts, which is something the rabbis frowned upon? I heard directly from Shmuel. This is the pshat. This is what Shmuel holds. The Makom Shein Kosfin. It's speaking of a place where he didn't write a ksuba. What happened? You didn't write a ksuba. Amar Kasafti Yulav. But this guy says, you don't normally write a ksuba, but I wrote her a ksuba. They're coming with a get, right? She comes with a get, says, I want my $200. And he says, it's right. There's normally no ksuba, but I wrote her a ksuba. You know, as an added favor, the minig is not to write a ksuba, but I wrote one. So Allah Lavi Rai, he has to bring a proof that he wrote a ksuba. In other words, and if he didn't bring a proof, he has to pay her. If he has proof that he wrote her a ksuba in addition to the get, so he says, listen, I'm not paying you the $200 based on the get unless you bring the ksuba too. Otherwise, I'm afraid you'll collect the second time. He claims it. Yeah, but go prove it. Since the minig is not to write a ksuba, and he says, I wrote a ksuba, and I'm worried that she's going to look at the second time. So we say, you bring a proof. If you didn't bring a proof, you got to pay up. Because the general idea is that you wouldn't go against we assume you wouldn't go against the minig on makom, which is not to write a ksuba. But makom shekosfin or shmuel seleis. If it's a place where they don't write a ksuba, and he says, I wrote a ksuba, you have to bring a proof. Makom shekosfin, a place where they do write a get, or do write a ksuba. But Amra, and she says, lo kasabli. The minig is to write a ksuba, but he didn't write a ksuba. You ask me when I come to collect for the get, the woman's coming to collect for the get, where's your ksuba? We write ksubas. He didn't write me one. The minig is, but he didn't write me one. So Allah Lavi Raya, she has to bring a proof that he didn't write one, that Adam were there throughout the whole procedure, the heirs and the Nasuin, there was nothing. And if she brings proof that there was no ksuba, then she can collect with the get. So when our Mishnah says, if she brings a get and there's no ksuba, why doesn't he have to be concerned? Maybe she'll collect the second time, maybe after he dies with the ksuba. She's going to collect now the $200 with her get, and later on she'll collect after he dies with the ksuba. The answer is that there is no ksuba. Either it's a place like Rav said where they don't write a ksuba, or according to Shmuel, it's a place where they didn't write, but he says he did write one. But if he can't prove it, we assume there's no. And if a place where they do write a ksuba, and she says I didn't get one, despite the fact that's the minig, and she proves that there was none, then she can collect. That's the Mishnah speaking according to Shmuel. Rav Hodarbe, and even Rav changed his opinion, and he learns something totally different. You know why she can collect based with the get on the thing? Remember, I said at the beginning, what does she do? When she gets divorced, she has a get and she has her ksuba. Normally, if there's a written ksuba. So she can collect with both, and that's the issue. Rav says, no, it doesn't work that way. Rav Hodarbe, he retracted from what he said about that it's speaking about a place where they don't write a ksuba. Whether it's a place where you write a ksuba or not, get go v'ika ksuba go v'tosis. This is how it works. The get entitles her to her basic 200. Every girl who's a psula gets married, or a bula gets 100, a psula gets 200. That's automatic, whether you write it or not. So if she can prove that she's divorced, she's entitled to the basic 200. The ksuba that she collects with is the additional amount over the 200. He always adds on more. Besides the 200, I'm going to give you another 20 million or 2,000 or whatever, right? So that's what it's for. With the get, she collects the 200, and with the ksuba, she collects the other 200. Everybody wants to object to this. Go give me an argument now. Now you can't have any claims. Isn't he worried if he pays based on the get, he's also going to be based on the ksuba, she might collect the second time. No. They're like two separate things. The get gives her the 200. The ksuba gets her the tosfos, the extra part. That's how it works. Now we're going to ask a kasha on Rav. Tanan, yeah. Yeah. How can she sell it? Then you probably can't. Either you can't sell it in that case, or she can write a special document that says the 200 that I'm entitled to, based on a court order, that everybody's entitled to it. It's like bituach leumi. I don't have a piece of paper that entitles me to my bituach leumi payment every month, but it's an automatic thing. The government, it's an act of the court, it's an act of the government. So that schus I'm giving over to you. Let's say I can't do it bituach leumi, but I'm selling you that, or I could. I'm going to get 1,000 shekels from bituach leumi next month. So I write you a document. That money it belongs to you, or something like that. You could do that. It's not. Mishnah said like this. Ksuba, and we get the second case where she brought a ksuba without the get, right? He omer, she says, Avat Geti. He says, where's your get? Oh, I lost it. Who omer? Avat Shobri. He says, well, I had a receipt that I paid you already. I lost the receipt. Or Balchov brought a star, an IOU right after Shemitah, like right now, today, Vav, what's today? Today's Vav. No, what's today? Today's Ches Tishrei. Ve'eni mo pruzbul. Shtarcho ve'eni bo pruz. There's no pruzbul. Harei lo yiparo. You don't have to be paid because, there's no pruzbul. And he says, she says, I didn't get paid yet. And he says, no, I paid you already. That's the Mishnah says you don't have to pay. Bishlam Shmuel Mukalabakim Shein Kosvin. Okay, what does he shout? Okay, it's a place where they don't write ksuba, but Amar Kasafti, and he says, I did write one. And we tell him, Darminale, I see Raya. We told him originally, right? He says, how did the Mishnah learn? When she brought a get originally, and there was no ksuba, it's a place where they didn't write a ksuba. And he says, I wrote a ksuba. And we tell him, bring a proof that you wrote a ksuba, and you're concerned that she's going to collect twice. And you can't bring a proof. It's still parei. He says you pay him, and he paid it based on that. And now he says I got a receipt, and I lost the receipt. And she says I lost my get when she's coming to collect supposedly for a second time. El Rav. So I understand the case, right? So he had to pay it in that case, and he said, okay, listen, you're forcing me to pay because I can't prove that I wrote the ksuba, but at least give me a receipt. We'll see, even though the rabbis frowned upon receipts, but there's no choice. Sometimes you have to get a receipt. There's no other choice. Elul Rav, but according to Rav, Nahi the Iker Lokavi, but according to Rav, that says what? The get collects the 200. The ksuba gets the extra part, the Tosefet. El Rav Nahi the Iker Lokavi, Tosefet Miyatikli. Why can't she get it? She's coming along now with a ksuba without a get, right? There's a ksuba and there's no get. She says, I want to collect. But according to Rav, so we said over there, she can't collect it based on that, right? In this case, that you can't collect based on that because he says, I paid you already and I lost my receipt. And she says, I lost my get, right? But according to Rav, what's the difference? Because she doesn't have the get. So she should be able to collect the Tosefet with the ksuba. She brings the ksuba without a get. According to Rav, the get gets you the 200. The ksuba gets you the extra part. So if she comes with the ksuba without a get, what's the issue? He says, I paid you already. What do you mean? You paid me already for what? For the get? Okay, fine. I'm not demanding the 200. I want the Tosefet. Who cares about the 200? I want the 20 million that you added on in the Tosefet. Why can't she? If she doesn't have a get, what does she come? She said, listen, we were divorced. I want my money. Here's the ksuba. He says, who says we're divorced? We're still married, right? There's no Adam. If there's a she'ein sham eidei gerushin, she doesn't have a get. So how do you know that she's divorced? Because the answer is there's no item there. Because he could say, I never divorced you. We're still married. I'm not paying you. If nothing is due yet. We're also going to He's also believed to say, I divorced you and I paid your entire ksuba, the entire ksuba. That's why she can't collect anything. I divorced you, but it's not like ksuba, and I paid you the whole ksuba. Whether written or not, I paid the whole thing. Because I could say we're not even divorced. I don't owe you anything. But what do you mean? There's no item that she's divorced? After the Goyim prohibited you having religious rights, you can't ever get a prusbul, anything like that. Isha go a get. She can collect a ksuba without a get because she's not allowed to hold a get. The goyim would kill her. Ubal chov shlo prusma, bal chov collect without prusma because he can't hold it prusma. So, but he get a gerushin askin. Must be speaking. There are Adam that she's divorced. He like Adam. If there's no way to gerushin, my God, what's she collecting with? After the sakana, she's not allowed to have a physical get. You can't hold on to it because the goyim will kill you if you have a get. So how are you demanding your money? You say you're divorced. How do we know you're divorced? It must be Adam that saw them get divorced. Because even a get only works if he gives it to her in front of Adam. Kedushin works with the Adam, not with the rabbi and not with the yeshiva bachrim singing. It works only with Adam, kosher Adam, for get and for getting married. Do you like Adam and my gavi? So there's definitely our Adam here. If there are Adam that she's divorced, so she brings a ksuba according to Rav. Why can't she get the tosefet? The answer of Shmuel, the answer is cool of Shmuel. The whole mission is rule of Shmuel. Is no machlokas here. Something missing mission. That's how you have to mission. In other words, in this case, where a woman comes with a ksuba, she has no get. And she says, "Here's my ksuba. I want to get pay me my ksuba. Let's say the tosefet." So she doesn't have to pay anything. Why? There's no Adam that she's divorced. Why? Because he could say, "I paid you already. If you don't believe me, then I'll tell you we're not even divorced. I have a mir. I can say we're not even divorced." But if there's Adam there. Navi Tosfos, Gavi Tosfos. If there's Adam and she was divorced and she has a ksuba in her hand, she doesn't have the get. She has a ksuba. She can collect the tosefet, the extra 20 million, the ikar and the basic 200. Imafka get if she has a get. If she produces the get, Gavi she can collect the low mafka get. The low mafka get the low Gavi, and if she can't produce the get, she doesn't collect. And as according to Rav, the get gets you the 200. If you don't have a get, you can't collect. You can't collect, even if there's Adam that she's divorced, because maybe she collected it already. But if she has exhibit, she can collect the extra 200. That's all Shmuel. But once you don't need to get any, once you can't hold on to a get anymore, even though she doesn't have a get, still she can collect. So that's how Rav will learn the Mishnah. That basically, if you don't have a get, you can't collect. Okay, after the sakana, when you're not allowed to hold a get, you could even collect the basic amount if you have Adam that you're divorced. But when it's not a time of sakana, the get gets you the 200, the ksuba gets you the extra 200. And in our Mishnah, when the Mishnah says she can't collect, it's speaking about what? Where there's no Adam that she's divorced, because he has some equal. He could say, I don't have, we're not even divorced. If there's no proof that she's divorced, she doesn't have a get, and there's no Adam that she's divorced, he could say, we're not divorced. We're not divorced. Or believe me when I say I paid you the whole amount, even the ksuba, even the tesefes, because I could argue and say we're not even divorced. I'm a Rav Kana Ravasi L'Rav. So Rav Kana Ravasi turned to Rav and said, I understand you. That the get gets the extra, the basic amount, the 200. What happens if there's no get? She's not. Remember, a woman collects ksuba when she's divorced or widowed. What happens if she's widowed? So there's no get. How does she get the $200? What does she collect with? Oh, be'edei misa. The answer is okay. There's Adam that the guy died, right? You can't demand that at the time of death he gave her a death certificate. They didn't have death certificates. They had Adam. Okay, Adam that he died. So maybe what happened with this? Maybe he divorced her sometime before he died. There's Adam that he died. Okay, she's going to collect the ksuba based on that, right? Based on the died. Why aren't you worried that she'll still, maybe he divorced her a year before that, and she's going to collect the ksuba twice, once based on the Adam, right, and once based on the get. She'll produce it in another court. Why aren't you worried about that, right? And she'll collect the second time. The answer is so first thing Gemara says is speaking about this. You're right. She can only collect it based on the Adam that he died if she was married at the time. They were Adam that they lived together, so they weren't divorced. So the Dimus Samach Lamisa Girsha, maybe he divorced her right before he died, and she hadn't cleaned out her effects yet from the apartment. The answer is then it's his tough luck. I mean, if he wrote a get, right before he died, then it's his tough luck. He put himself in that position. We'll see we had before also at Amona Mena Erison. They never consummated. She was on an Erison. They had Erison, and then he died. How does she collect? We'll see. She collects the 200 also. Amona Mena Erison. How does she collect it? They weren't living together. Based on what? Be'eda Misa. Maybe she'll produce a get. Maybe he divorced her. They got engaged. He divorced her. They weren't living together, obviously. And then there's Adam that he died. Maybe you're going to collect on it twice. She'll collect once on his death, and the Adam saying that he died, and once she'll collect with a get. Ella, but in a case like this where there's no choice, it's like this, where you have to write a receipt in a case like that. If it's in a case where what happened, the man died after Abraham, they never consummated, and now who are paying the Yorshim, wherever his Yorshim are having to pay the Ksuba, and they know that he divorced her, and she's collecting once with a get and once with the death certificate, with the Adam of death, then they'll say, no, we want a receipt to be able to prove it when there's no choice. Like today, when you pay somebody in cash, guy says, I only want cash. Okay, fine, I'll pay you cash because you don't want to pay your taxes and all that, you cheater. But at least give me a receipt so you don't collect the second time. So in a case like that, you need a receipt. In other words, you don't have to say that it's speaking about in the case where the Nisuin, they were still married, and he was still living in the house. The answer is when there's no choice, you write a receipt. If you don't assume that sometimes you're forced to write a receipt, what about in a case where there was no divorce at all? A man died, right? Man died. Okay, she comes to collect her ksuba from the Yorshim. The Yorshim say, okay, fine. How do we know that you won't collect it 2 or 3 times? You go to other courts. You'll collect it from us once. You'll go to another court where they don't know this, they didn't have computer records, and you collect the second time. The answer is you have to have a receipt. The Gemara in Bava Basra and Zion and Beis there talks about Mar Kshish. Rav Chisda had 2 sons, Mar Kshish and Mar Yunuka. Which one was the Kshisha means old, Kashish, and Yunuka is the younger one. Right, very good. So Tosfos over there says that really Mar Kshisha is the younger one. He was born to Rav Chisda when Rav Chisda was older, and Mar Yunuka is the older son who was born to Rav Chisda when Rav Chisda was young, when he was Yunuka. There's a shayla which one's which. But here, Rashi says an amazing thing over here. It says over here, Amar Mar Kshisha, Kshisha, the son of Rav Chisda, said to Rav Ashi the following question. But before we get to the question, who is this Mar Kshisha? So we just explained this Mar Kshisha Mayanuka. Rashi says over here, Rashi says, where's the Rashi? A little bit above. You see the Rashi Mar Yanuka. Kshisha about a third of the way down on the page. Kshisha Mar Yanuka. He doesn't even say Yanuka over here in our Gemara, right? It just says Amalei Mar Kshisha Rav Chisda. So Rashi says Mar Kshisha Mar Yanuka. Shnei Banim Hayu Rav Chisda. The same Shneim Shavim. They both had the same name. Elishagol Karla Mar Kshisha. Ulitzar Karla Mar Yanuka. So Rashi over there in Bavasa doesn't tell you. Rashi over here tells us Mar Kshisha is the older one, and Mar Yanuka is the younger one. Tells us this is the opposite. Mar Yanuka is the older one, born to Rav Chisda when Rav Chisda was young. But what's that shame Shneim Shem? They both had the same name. Well, this is my Lord, this is my brother Larry and my other brother Larry. What's going on Shem Shem Shem? So I wrote down in my views, I said, it could be that he had 2 wives, and each one wanted to name the son, like don't they all name him Nachman, those guys? Don't they all name, a guy has 10 wives and they're all called Nachman, So that's apparently what happened. Maybe each one wanted to have that name, right? I don't know, whatever. But it's interesting to me. Rashi goes to the point of saying they had the same name. In other words, why does Rashi say it? Probably because why don't you just tell you what their name is? Amar Avram ben Rav Chisda, Amar Yitzchak ben Rav Chisda. He just calls him Mar Kshisha Mayanuka based on what the father is. Must be Rashi says must be that Rashi said must be that they're why they call Mar Kshisha. Whatever the reason is, if Kshisha is the older one or Kshisha is the younger one, why call them Kshisha and Yanuka? Just what's their name? Must be that they have the same name, and that's how you differentiate between them. Interesting. He says, okay. Anyway, what did he say to him? Amanam and Eris Manon this like Ksuba. You just said Akasha. How does Amanam and Eris? How does she collect her Ksuba? I mean, aren't you worried that she's going to collect it twice? Once with a get. Let's say she was once based on she was an almana, and once with maybe she was divorced and she's going to collect it twice. Or in general, she collected from 2 different courts. The answer is because you write a receipt in cases like that. But how do you know she gets exhibit at all? We're at the first of the wide lines thing more. Elema, if it's Nisar Monaskarsha, we had before Mishnah says like this: if she was widowed or divorced, so she can collect the whole thing. In other words, the basic suba, the 200 plus the tosefet. So that's a proof that she gets this. This is Dilma the Kostela. And over there, he wrote it specifically. In other words, when we talk about it, we said it's a Tanai Bezin, whether you write it or not. Places they wrote it, as long as you read it, it's an act of the court. Every woman who's married is entitled to Ksuba, whether she has it in writing or not, whether she lost it, whether it was never written, she's entitled to it. So how do we know that a woman who's only had Arison is also entitled to the basic 200? Because it says over here, she collects the whole thing. But maybe that's where she's not entitled, but he wrote her. He says, listen, I love you so much, and I want to show you how much I love you. Not only am I sending you the roses, but I'm also telling you you're going to get your ksuba, even if we get divorced or widowed from Arison. Maybe he wrote it. What's the chiddush? If he wrote it, or what's the chiddush yet? Even though he wrote her, I'm giving you the, right now at the time of the Arison, I'm giving you the ksuba. He only wrote it on the condition that he's going to consummate. Otherwise, he wouldn't have given it to her. So we're saying that's what Rav Meir says. Kamash one Tanakam says, no, if he wrote it to her at the time of the Arison, it means he meant to give it to her now. She gets everything. Yeah, the cost of law, if he wrote it to her, she gets everything, even the Tosefet. If he didn't write it to her at the time of the Arison, why should she get the whole thing? Even if you say that a girl from Arison is entitled to a ksuba based on the Tanai Bezin, an act of the court, she's only entitled to the 200 or the 100, not to the whole Tosefet. So it must be that he wrote it to her. Bella. So how do we know that she's entitled? How do we know that it's a court order that even a girl of Arison is entitled to 200 or 100? Element of Rav Shapiro. Ishto Arison is like this: if a woman his wife is an arusa, and what? And she died, lo onin. He's not an owner. Owner can't eat kachim, even a regular Israel. Anybody cannot eat kachim. No. If he's a Kohen, he doesn't tell me. Remember, Kohen is only mitame to his next of kin, but not to his fiance. Only if you're married. Lo mitame lo. V'chein he lo nes lo mitame lo. She doesn't have to stop eating kachim. She doesn't have to lo mitame lo, and she doesn't have a kahanas, a woman who's a Kohen, is not prohibited from coming to me anyway, but she doesn't have to go to the funeral. Lo mitame lo. Mesa, if she dies any or she's not entitled to inherit her. Normally, a husband inherits his wife, as we said, right? Either a Duraisa or Drabanan, but he inherits his wife. But if she's only a fiance, he doesn't inherit her. Mesu, if he dies, go with Tsubasa. Here also says, so here's a proof that he's only a fiance, still she gets Iksuba. Here's your proof from there. Again, Dilma de Kosovla. Maybe he wrote her. He said, no, maybe it's making a case. Normally, in other words, it's not an act of the court that every Arus is entitled to Ksuba. Maybe he told her, he wrote her Ksuba from Tyerson. You say, if he wrote it to her, what's the chiddush? Of course, if he said, I'm giving the Ksuba, of course she's entitled to it. May say any Maybe there's no chiddush in it. The chiddush is that if she dies, he's not entitled to inherit her. You might think that he's entitled to inherit a fiance just like a wife, Kamash one, that she's not. So therefore, we can't really prove it from these cases. In other words, it's assumed over here that it's a court order that even an arusa gets a ksuba. It's a court order whether it's written or not, but you can't prove it from these cases. I'm going to have Nachman Rafuna. Rav said Rafuna understands him. Rav Damer get gova ikar. That the get gets the, remember, Rav said in Amad Alf, that a get is entitles either the 200 or the 100, and the ksuba entitles it to Sefet. Why aren't you concerned that she's going to produce a get in one court and collect the 200? The government collect. And then she'll put it on another court for government collect there. Why aren't you worried that she's going to collect twice with the get? Like we said before, what you do is you tear up the get like they do today. Today, when they give a get, they tear it up right away. Shouldn't have any problems. Maybe you tear it up. So how can you tear it up? Amra, she says, I need to get to prove I'm divorced. And otherwise, they'll say, hey, you're a married woman. How can you prove that? We know that you're married. You had a sheitel, right? You must be married, right? You have children. So how can you get married based on this? You have to prove that you do it. So she needs to get. So how can you tear up? The answer is that Carlina, that we tear it up. Let's say you rip it into two. The Kasfina Gabain, you write on the back of the get. Gita, then on this get, Karina, we tore it. Labishim to get the puzzle, not because it's a puzzle get. The get's good. She's divorced. Then not to get puzzle. Ella de Lotara, we tear it up so she shouldn't be able to collect the second time. We write on the back of the get. She is, and that's effectively like they do today. They give her a receipt or some sort of a document that said this woman has been divorced in such and such a court. But we tore up the get. Why do you tear up the get? So she shouldn't be able to collect a second time. So that's what you do. You tear up the get. So Rob says the get gets you the 200. The ksuba gets the tosefet, and Shmuel says it all depends on the circumstances of proof or not. And our mission, when we said if she produces the ksuba without a get, we don't let her collect based on that, right? Because you can say, where's the get? The ksuba, maybe you paid it already. That's what the guy says. I paid the get already. But if you have a get without a ksuba, you do collect it because he could say it's speaking about a case, and some assumption is a place where they don't write a get, where they don't write a ksuba rather. Or if you wrote a ksuba, you have to prove it, etc. Like we explained in Amal according to Shmuel. Says the mission. Shnei get mistakes. Let's say a man happens, so this happens sometimes, if this guy's not a Kohen, he divorces her and he marries her a second time. And in, let's say, the first time he divorced her, there was a ksuba based on, let's say, 1980, right? They wrote it. Then he married her, divorced her in 1990. And then he married her again in 2000. And at that time, there was another ksuba. And then he divorced her in 2010. In other words, there are two ksubas, each one written before they got, each one before the first get, one before the second get. She collects them both. She never collected for whatever reason. He didn't have the money, whatever. She's collecting the Orshim now or whatever. So Shnei Ksubas go, she collects both of them, right? Because each one was written for each marriage. However, Shnei Ksubas get it. Let's say there's only one get, but she had two ksubas. Why would she have two ksubas? Because he wrote her, whatever the reasons we'll see, let's say he wrote her a ksuba, and that means she has a lien on his property. And then he wrote her a later ksuba in the same marriage. He says, listen, I'll give you another ksuba, and there's more money involved. You can collect even more, but it's a later lien. So you got to be worried maybe he has other obligations before. So that's why there's two ksubas. You get echad. So she only collects one of the ksubas. Which one? We'll see. She has her choice. Oh, ksuba b'shnei gittin, or she has a ksuba with two divorces. What does that mean? When he married her a second time, he didn't give her another ksuba. As we'll see, when you marry a second time, it's based on the first ksuba. So the oh ksuba v'get visa, or she had one ksuba with a get and proof that he died, right? So you might say, what are the two ksubas? No, there's only one ksuba. She can only collect once. Even if there's two ksubas, but there's only one get, they were both written on the same marriage. She can only collect ein agova el ksubah. She can collect one. Shemagarish ishto, if a man divorces his wife and takes her back, almanas ksubah rishon machzir. We assume that he's under the condition that he's going to pay her first ksubah. As he didn't, that it's only one he wants. His intention is to pay the original ksuba, unless there were two ksubas, one before the first get, one before the first get, and one after the first get, before the second get. Otherwise, he only collect once. So what if she had two ksubas? He boy b'haygov, he boy b'haygov. Could she collect with either one? What does that mean? She has two ksubas. So she can only collect one. Which one? Sounds like she can collect with either one. Let's say there were two purchases or two loans. Let's say I lent you money, and they're both the same transaction. We're both signed, the Adam are signed on the same transaction. One is written in January, one's written in February. So Bitul Sheni Sarishan. Rav Nachman or Shmuel says that the second one supersedes the first one. In other words, the second one annuls the first one. So how can you say she can collect with either ksuba? If he added something on in the second one, that's why he has them. In other words, if the first one, you have a first one in January and the second one in February, and they're exactly the same, then the second one annulled the first one, and they agreed to it. They both agreed that we'll use the second one, not the first one, and he has a later lien. But if he added something in the second one, over here he added more money, he added a tree, whatever he added, speaking where he added something in the second one. And as he said, the second ksuba, I'm giving you a first ksuba, you want to use the first ksuba, fine. But if you take a second ksuba and I'll add some more money, some more trees, some more property to it, is with a later lien, if she accepted that. So then she has a choice, either to collect the first one, less money on the first one, or more money with the second one, but less, but you have less of a lien because it's a later date. Let's say she produces a get with which she can collect her ksuba, and she has the ksuba, and she has proof that he died. In get, listen to this. If the get was before the ksuba, go for sheikh ksubas. Why? Because she has a get, I was divorced. And then she has a later ksuba after she was divorced. That means she's entitled to the basic 200 based on her get. Then she has a ksuba after the get. So that means she was married a second time. There's two ksubas, so she can collect two ksubas. Ksuba, let's say the ksuba was before the get. The date of the ksuba was before the get, and she can only collect the ksuba because she had a ksuba. She got divorced. Then he died later on. So if he divorced her after the first ksuba, fine. So she got after the first ksuba, even if he took her back. And there's proof that he took her back. There's proof they were married a second time. And then the husband died. So you might say she's entitled to two. No, because when he took her back, he first gave her, they were married. There was a ksuba. He gave her a divorce. She's entitled to a ksuba. Now he took her back again. But there was no additional ksuba. There was only the first ksuba. He only took her back on the assumption he's going to pay one ksuba, the first ksuba. So even if now she has a get, it's valid. And she has proof that he died later on after he married her a second time. She's only entitled to one ksuba because the second marriage was based on the first ksuba, unless there are two different ksubas. All right, tomorrow we'll start from the Mishnah. Tomorrow, the Slichas is at 6 o'clock, Erev Yom Kippur. So we're going to go back to our regular time of 5:20, 10:20 p.m. New York time, Rami.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Okay. Tomorrow we go back to our regular time, Yirtzeh Hashem, of 5:20.
Very good. Excellent. Yeah, beautiful.
Mafsi Matayva culture.
You too, take care.